Hello and welcome to episode 1101 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, September 23rd. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well myself. Excited for the weekend to hang out and relax a bit and see how this main event goes, man. This has been such a crazy sweat. Our league is insane. Some of the standings moves for mid-September, late September, even now it's the 23rd for crying out loud. 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 3.5, 2.5. Those were some of the point moves yesterday from folks in our top 8 in our league. And you just don't usually see moves like that. It obviously depends on your standings, and every league is different, but these standings have remained insanely tight. And Striker, by his own words, is sweating, basically razzing me a little bit, saying you said it was over and it's not. And I didn't say that to jinx him. I really didn't. He had a great lead, and it was shortly after getting Dustin May. And while I've always skeptical of TJ returners, I still thought that was the best move for him by far. As far as what he needed, Striker being Scott Jenstead, but it has not really worked. And that pitching is hurting him. It's down to 29.5 points. He's at 101.5. 96 for Jason Gill, 95.5 for me, 92, 90.5 are in the mix as well. They had big losses yesterday, but they can easily flip. I was in 5th early in the day. I jump up to 2nd, land in 3rd. So it's all over the place. I won't break down the full thing, but that's where my attention has been, is on every move in that league right now. Do you want to know how many innings of amazingness I left on my bench this week?
Yeah, I know the answer to this, and it's hard because you left in, friend of the show, Kyle Gibson, who we haven't heard from in quite a while because he's busy pitching in Philadelphia. He's no longer pitching in Texas and being able to swing by.
You should see my grass.
Yeah, I bet it's atrocious right now.
You can't find Char when she goes out. She's gone. And sometimes I'm like, oh, she's lost forever. But no, then she comes trotting out. But yeah, it's just uncut grass for days out there with Kyle Gibson. I started him in the 2-start. Strikeouts and wins are kind of the main things I'm hammering. So I chose him in a 2-start over these 3 guys. Bradish against Houston. We know what he did yesterday. JP Sears against Seattle. He wasn't doing anything. I couldn't even trust him against the Mariners, who are like a decent offense, but not super scary. And then Dre Jameson at the Dodgers, who dominated. That's 19 2/3 of elite work from them. And I'm just like, I stand by the move, process over results, but oh my God, is it pain? All 3 of them won their games too. So it's just been a nightmare. But I do still have 3 wins on the week from Woodruff, Wright, McKenzie. I've got a shot, even though Tyler Wells and Kyle Gibson tried to ruin my week. I've chiseled the ERA back down to 5 for the week, which, again, all things considered, is pretty good. But my God, was it painful to watch them all dominate. Anyway, don't need to do a full breakdown of my team. I am excited to see how that league finishes. But today, I want to talk about is some breakout pitchers that might be a little suspicious. We talked some suspicious breakout hitters. And what we mean by that is, guys that when you look at the underlying stats, there might be a few things there that are a little bit alarming, or at least concerning about whether or not they can repeat at the same level next year. There's going to be guys that are higher level talents here, as well as some mid and lower tier guys. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on where you're at with them next year. Are you going to pay the premium because of their gaudy ERA, or are you going to back off? So why don't we just start with probably the biggest and most obvious guy here, Tony Gonsolin. He's having just a brilliant season. Obviously, pitching for the Dodgers certainly helps things. They can, cover woes pretty easily, and they're always going to back you up for dubs. That's why he's 16-1 in 23 starts, currently on the IL, by the way. But he has a 2.10 ERA and an 0.87 WHIP for Tony Gonsolin in 128 1/3. Huge season. Found his command after losing it last year, but obviously, when you look under the hood, you see 116 Ks. So that's good for an 8.1 strikeout per 9. Sorry, Fangraphs is down this morning. I'm on BREF. I'm not calculating every strikeout rate percentage. So you're getting K9s today, y'all. And that doesn't mean dogs. And, his 35 walks for a 2.5 BB9, that's good. Again, he got his command back, but he's riding a 5.3 hits 9 as well. So what do you make of Gonsolin? You got the gaudy win total, the insane ERA, the fact that he's on a great team. Is that going to inflate the price too high for you? And what do you think that price is going to be?
It's really hard to tell I mean, he's had a fantastic year. His price should be extremely high, comparatively speaking, to where it has been previously. But I mean, this has also been a guy that a lot of people in the industry have loved for a really long time, including us. I think the biggest concern right now is health. I mean, he's on the IL with an elbow issue. And, he's kind of progressing a little bit slower than the team had expected and would have liked. Now, he had a good day yesterday, apparently. Dave Roberts said that, he looked good in his bullpen. He's getting advanced to live hitters. That his arm speed looks good, that there was no, residual soreness or the reason why he hit the IL to begin with. But I mean, that's scary. Like it is. And I think that will help drive down his price a little bit, depending on how he finishes out the year. Does he come back in the playoffs and play a big role and look good? It's hard because, I mean, obviously when you're pitching this well, like things look pretty good under the hood for the most part, but like they don't look great. They don't look elite. We're not talking about a guy who's like missing a ton of bats. He's got like league average zone contact. Like, that's fine, but like that's also not what you kind of expect from a guy having this year. I think if he is considered like a top 30 starter or a top even 35 starter next year, like I don't think I'm on board with that. I think that's probably too aggressive for me, especially from a guy who's got 120 something innings this year. Like
the health for Gonsolin, I think, is something that I keep coming back to, where I'm like, even if I wanted to get fully in on the production, what kind of innings count am I going to get? I don't know, and I don't think it's going to be particularly high for Gonsolin, or I don't believe that I can necessarily rely on it being particularly high. And again, I lean toward not losing my mind over health concerns, even with guys that have health track records that are a bit negative, like Gonsolin. But usually that comes with a discount, right? If I'm going to get somebody that can be a bit cheaper because of their health, I'll take that extra risk on. Gonsolin, I don't think so. I think he is going to be more expensive. I think he is going to be in that top 30, 35 starter type range. And I don't think I want to pay full freight there. So I'm likely to be leaning away. I just think the numbers are going to be too gaudy. Don't forget another thing that can influence ADPs. He's going to be at the top, right? He's going to consistently be up there. And I don't mean at the tip top, but I mean, he's going to be in the high in the queue. And so when people are looking at their default queues, you're going to see a lot of Tony Gonsolin up there, and those numbers are going to really jump out, and that will influence things. So I think push come to shove, I mean, we'll see where the price is as drafts get going here next month, but I don't see myself with any Gonsolin at market price.
I don't either. I mean, it's a bummer because I didn't get him at the reduced rate this year, and I wish I had. And now he's going to be more expensive.
You'd be sitting pretty with that. It was tough though, with the command where it was, plus the health concerns. I understood, he wasn't particularly expensive, but I understood if people weren't exactly going for Gonsolin this year because, what were we going to get? And turns out pretty good.
I think guys like Gonsolin, we're going to talk about Kyle Wright here in a little bit. I think they are a good example of, hey, guys you've been in on the past as sleepers, just because they've disappointed doesn't mean they still can't be sleepers.
Yep.
And because I think Gonsolin and Wright are really good examples, at least for me, of guys who I've loved in the past that I didn't go back to the well on this year, and I should have. The skills were all still there. The opportunity was actually even better than they had been in the past for these guys. And one of the reasons why they didn't make as big of an impact in the majors was because of opportunity in the past. So I think this is just a reminder of like, hey, don't give up on the guys that you believed in the past.
Yes, I think that's a great point, especially, in somebody like Kyle Wright, who didn't have that much track record under his belt to necessarily say, hey, we got to run away from this. Let's give him a shot. We will get to Kyle Wright in a moment, but since the next guy's on the same team, let's stay with the Dodgers here real quick and talk Tyler Anderson. This one I don't think will be super overpriced in the market, but he will be more expensive, right? He will get that. He'll be that premium soft tossing, mid-tier type guy. It's also going to depend on where he goes, because Tyler Anderson will not be on the Dodgers next year unless they re-sign him. He's a free agent, so they have to bring him back. But he's 15-4 with a 2.52 ERA, 101 WHIP, and 125 strikeouts in 167 2/3. Of course, that's a 6.7 K9. That's terrible. That's like flat out terrible in today's game. Doesn't mean you can't roster it because he's doing so much other good, but you need to cover those Ks because he is a detriment to your K bottom line there. At least in terms of a rate situation. If he's getting 167 plus innings again next year for Tyler Anderson, then the volume is still okay. 134 last year, 125 this year. That's not a terrible raw total, but the rate isn't good. And if you do play in an innings cap league, don't forget that means you essentially play in a K9 league. And a guy like Tyler Anderson actually becomes a detriment at that point. And you really have to assess that into his value. A detriment in strikeouts, of course. Anyway, he's leaned on an amazing changeup this year. It has jumped another level. It's been his best pitch in previous years, but this year it's on another level completely. It's one of the best pitches in all of baseball by pitch value, which means the results have been great. Pitch values are not predictive, though, so it doesn't mean that that's going to carry over. What do you make of a 32-year-old Tyler Anderson having a career year with the Dodgers? Is this simply a case of when Dodgeritis goes right and being on this team is a perfect mix? Or can he build upon this and be a consistently solid, mid-tier rotation type guy for folks next year for Tyler Anderson?
I mean, I think he can, depending on where he ends up. Like, is like this level sustainable? No, I mean, obviously not. There's going to be some regression, but like you said, like, because the lack of strikeouts and him likely not being on the Dodgers, probably going to go get a multi-year deal somewhere else, he'll slip in the ADP. People are going to point at Tyler Anderson as like the premier case of, hey, this is a guy who just had a really good season, but it's going to regress. And yeah, of course it's going to regress. Like if we didn't think it was going to regress, we'd be taking him as like a top 10 starter. But I also think the floor is pretty decent outside of the injury history. Like the injury history is probably the most concerning part about a guy like Anderson. But he threw 167 innings last year. He made 11 starts and 2 relief appearances in the shortened 2020 season, which is a full season in that year. So like, you kind of got to say like, hey, he's been healthy. Like all the Dodgers starters, like he's the one who keeps making his turn in the rotation with no problem.
Exactly. And interestingly, this year Tyler Anderson has matched last year's innings total despite 5 fewer starts. He has 26 starts, 2 relief appearances this year, and Tyler Anderson had 31 starts last year for that same 167 innings. 2019 was a washout, right? 20 2/3, basically missed the, you call that a nothing season, but he had 176 innings the year before that. So like you're saying, Tyler Anderson now has 4 out of 5 healthy years. And you don't get full credit for 2020. We know that. We always make that disclaimer, but you pitch as much as you could, right? You can only do so much. So yeah, I wonder if he is more of a nice reliable innings eater type, that if he doesn't go too high, because everyone pulls back on that Dodgers season, maybe there's a case where, I don't want to say he's a bargain, but that he's not a bad value in the market. I could see that world where everyone just pulls back on Tyler Anderson and says, we're not paying it. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well now we've gone too far. I still believe this guy can put up a high 3s, low 4s. I guess that's the question though. Does he go back to like his mid 4s level, which you can have some viability in 15-team leagues, which is our general focus. If you're in 12s and Tyler Anderson goes back to previous, he's not really rosterable outside of random streams. But if he is the 2021 guy, we can still use that in 15-team leagues as like a team streamer. Does he go in the middle, or does he go all the way back to that? I know the team context is going to matter, and you need that piece to know where he's going to play. But let's just put him on just a neutral place. Do you think he's going to be like a 3.80 ERA guy, or back up to 4.5?
I think 3.80 sounds about right. Like, I mean, and like you said, the team context matter, but even more than that, like the park context matter. The defense matters behind him.
Agreed.
I think all these things kind of matter, but I don't see why there's any reason he can't be, this year's Quantrill, which was a guy that was actually pretty good and everybody was all like, "I'm not touching this guy," and he
We're
went
gonna
like,
get to him too.
yeah,
He's on this list
I know, like he's
because he
a
did
guy
it again.
that everybody faded the dude because they're like regression, and then you're like, hey, he just doubled down on exactly what he did the previous year. So
Yep.
I don't see why Tyler Anderson can't do that given the right situation. Like I don't know where he's going to end up. I'd prefer him to go to a good park with a good defense behind him. Like he'd be the perfect guy to end up with the Cardinals, or the Mets. But like, if he ends up in the AL East, if he's a Yankee, if he's a Red Sox, then yeah, I'm probably going to fade the hell out of him because those parts scare the crap out of me.
Understandably, because Tyler Anderson with that low strikeout rate does need a quality defense to make sure they're turning the balls in play into consistent outs.
I also don't think he's like a top 150 and maybe not even a top 175 pick. And so like he's one of those guys, especially in your 10s and 12s, like you're taking him at the back end of your draft. Like and even in 15 team leagues, like you're not taking him the first 10 to 12 rounds.
Maybe like your 6th, 7th pitcher, maybe?
I'm totally fine with that, especially if you've built up your strikeouts already. Like, yeah, definitely go. And, he's one of those guys who is so unsexy, but just stabilizes.
I can relate, Tyler. Sorry.
Yeah, I totally get it.
But yeah, so that's Tyler Anderson. Obviously, we'll have much more on him when he lands, wherever he lands. Got to get through the playoffs and all that first. And if it's a big playoff, maybe the Dodgers say, hey, we found something with you in that changeup. We'll bring you back. And then we'll both probably bring him up at a level there and say, hey, now you could make him your 4th, 5th pitcher if you really wanted to. Because while I wouldn't expect a repeat if he goes back to the Dodgers, I would expect them to keep that changeup good. To turn his outs or to turn all those balls in play into outs consistently and foster a mid to high 3s ERA for Tyler Anderson. So he'll be interesting. I don't think he'll be too expensive. This guy will be though. And I get it. I love Kyle Wright. I understand that gaudy 19 win total standing out. That is an MLB best. 3.18 ERA, 116 whip, and 170 innings for the 26-year-old breakout. 165 strikeouts and 50 walks. That is an 8.7 K9 and a 2.6 BB9. He's been wonderful, but he is going to be expensive. He's on one of the best teams in the league, had one of the best seasons. Again, he's going to be at the top of that queue early. As the super aces go, once you get past those super aces, Kyle Wright's going to be at the top of that SP pool. How long does he last, Justin? Is he a 4th rounder in 15 team leagues, which would make him a top 60 type pick next year? Is that where you're at with Kyle Wright? What do you think about this breakout season?
I like the breakout season, but the last few starts have been kind of shaky, and I do wonder how much people are going to be like, oh, tired down the stretch. Like, you see a guy we fade. I wonder if he ends up not really going in that top 60 because of the way he's kind of finishing out. I'm still going to be on board. Like
it was painful to eat 8 at Oakland, right?
Yeah.
Like you cannot fathom how bad that is compared to, what the expectation is. I will say though, he was coming off a 4-start run where he'd won all 4 in a row, and he had one at Boston and one home against Houston. The other 2 were at Pitt and versus Colorado, but that was a 4-start run where he allowed 3 earned. And so, the regression monster came in Oakland. You don't usually get an appointment with the regression monster in Oakland, but sometimes if that's the only time he can fit you in, he's going to get you, and he got you. In this case, 8 base runners, 2 homers for Oakland were able to do the damage against him, but he rebounded. He's now allowed 3 earned. Kyle Wright has in 11 1/3 against San Francisco and the Nats since then. 2 more wins as well. So he bounced back. I feel pretty good about the way he is coming down the stretch. He's had a couple duds. He also had a 6 earned dud at the Mets, but that's the Mets. I slough that off and move on. The Oakland one stung without a doubt, but at least he bounced back. It's going to be an expensive price. I believe in so much of what he's doing. I still think it's probably smart to just fade off of the breakout season just as a principle thing, regardless of anything Wright does. I think it's probably just the right move to not pay that premium.
No, it's not the right move. It's the wrong move. I think it all depends on the price. Like if he is a top 60 pick next year, then I think probably, yeah. I don't know that he will be.
What's
think
the
that
lowest you think he'll range though as an ADP,
I think
not his max pick?
I think his ADP is gonna be very all over the place. I think I think people are really excited about him early on, and nobody's been talking about him down the stretch. Part of
I
that,
think they're missing that because I think they're
yeah.
overrating the pullback. It's a 3.60
Well,
ERA in the second half, but it's a
I think
1.17 win.
And I also think that Spencer Strider's breakout takes a
Yeah,
lot of the shine away from him.
that's true. And
Um,
Fried having another ace type
yep.
season as well.
So like he's the number 3 on a great team, a team that may compete for another World Series here, or that is competing for another World Series here. I wonder if he's more of like a just inside the top 100 guy. And at that price, I'm totally willing to buy. I don't know if I'd buy at. I don't think I would buy at a top 60. I think
I
first
wouldn't.
4 rounds in a 15 teamer, first 5 rounds in a 12 teamer. I don't think I'm buying there. I think I'd buy just inside or outside of the top 100, and I think honestly that's where he's going to kind of go.
So I'm trying to find something of a comp around that level for this year, and the name I'm looking at here, and I know it's not a perfect 1-to-1, especially because of what Wright's done. That 19 win total should not move the needle that much in terms of like drafting him, but I think it will. But Shane McClanahan, you might be stunned to recall this, but he was a 92 ADP in the main.
And I think and that's exactly why I think he might go around there.
Manoah was 81. So you know what? I am going to pivot on that and say that if those two went there with the hype that they had, then yeah, maybe I can definitely see Wright going closer to the 75 to 100 range instead of top 60, in which case I do enter get back in the fray a little bit more. I still think it's probably wise to not fully buy high here. As we always say, try to find the next Cal Wright. That's easier said than done, though. He was a needle in a haystack, right? He was a late 400 something type guy pick if he was being picked, and then he was a waiver wire pick. I got him for $1. I got lucky as hell. I like Cal Wright, but I did not know that this was happening. I paid $1 for him because he was starting for Atlanta. I didn't know he was going to have an ace season. So I would love to find that next version. But at that ADP that you're suggesting, I think that does play a bit more, and I could see myself taking that gamble because I was in on McClanahan. I didn't get him in my mains, but I was certainly open to paying that price. I think he might be a little bit higher, so I'll use the Manoah comp. 81 is where Manoah went. That's not an unfair price for Cal Wright. Okay, I can get behind that. All right, so speaking of Manoah, perfect transition there. He's next because yes, this is not a new breakout. He's having another great season. So don't get too hung up on the term breakout because he was great last year. But it is another kind of I'm looking at the season and I'm like, is this going to overinflate Manoah's price, or can he catch up to where the ERA is? And what I mean by that is a 2.40 ERA and a 101 WHIP, just another brilliant WHIP. 8.2 K9 gives me a little bit of pause, except when I watch him, I'm like, how is he not a 10, 12 K9 type guy? Like, I think he can develop there. And that's what I mean by catch up to the ERA, get the underlying stats in line to where a gaudy 2.5 ERA sits. Cause he's at a 3.42 FIP right now, which is still good, by the way. That's not bad. It is a 1-run split between that and his ERA, but that's the strikeout rate just kind of being like, oh, okay. It's a little bit pedestrian for an ace. Are you ready to pay the premium on Manoah? Because he ain't going 81 again next year. He is definitely going top 60 and probably top 45. So are you ready to pay that price for Alek Manoah? To give you context, we had Alcantara at 38, Robbie Ray at 44, Justin Verlander, obviously coming off the health, at 53. He's going to be somewhere in that range, I think, if not higher. What do you think of Alek Manoah's season?
Where did since you got it up, where did Max Fried go last?
Max Fried. It's an interesting comparison too, because he also doesn't have great strike rate. He was actually the next pitcher, 54.
Yeah, so I think that's the really good comp here. He's this guy that he's not going to have gaudy strikeout numbers, but
he did last year though, 10.2 for Manoah. That's why I think maybe he can get to a point where he is more of a consistent strikeout stud.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's in him. I don't know.
Fangraphs is back. Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
Oh,
My lifeline
yay!
is my lifeblood returned.
Yeah, though I will say, every time I use the picture list player pages,
Oh, they're amazing.
like they're awesome.
I'm
Like,
not closing that tab.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
now I can cite my other stats there.
Mm.
But yeah, those are the player pages to look at all the time. They're so good. Nick has put so much effort into making those go-to pages, and it's really paying off. So
I honestly use them every day. Like I really do.
it's been I'm with my daily SP charts. What tabs I open? Fangraphs, BREF, Savant, Picture List. Those are four. That's how I start my research.
When I'm doing my off-season projects, I will be living on those player pages.
They're beautiful, and the visualizations too. I love just looking at those bars, and you get a taste right away. It's like the StatCast profile that we, if it's all red or all blue.
Love it. I love that they have the little link to show the MLB average on every single stat.
Exactly
right there, so I don't have to like go back to a reference point to like, oh, what's the O contact or the zone rate? MLB average zone rate, like, to see how much above or below this guy is.
Yeah,
I've got it right there. So
it's and all the pitch breakdown stuff too. So yeah, pitcherlist.com, go check it out. It's wonderful. But Fangraphs back up. So he does have an 11%. Manoah has an 11% swinging strike rate, which is down a bit from last year at 13%. So that's probably cutting into his Ks. But everything else is so good. He's actually cut his walk rate by 3 points too, from 9% to 6%. So we like that. There has been advancements this year. His Sierra is basically the same, 388 last year, 386 this year. He continues to outrun it with his production because he's so difficult to square up. He's allowing a 204 average after last year's 191. So Manoah's got it, man. He's going to be 25. I really do think he's an ace in the making, and I am willing to pay the premium here. I faded him this year, saying I want to see another year. I had a few concerns. The platoon split was a concern. I was worried about a budding home run issue, which did not come to fruition. He cut the homers back down to 0.8, and I was worried about that division. He didn't exactly quell the platoon issue, 694 OPS to lefties, 472 to righties, but 694 is not killing you. It's a large split, but it's because he's so dominant against right-handers. So I think Manoah is an ace in the making. I will pay the premium with him.
I mean, I disagree with you that he's an ace in the making. I think he's already an ace.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And
I just meant gets the Ks back to ace level.
And yeah, I know this is stupid and it's narrative, and there will definitely be people who push back. I just love the mentality. Like I love how to steal a common phrase, a really popular common phrase right now. He has that dog.
Got that dog in him, baby.
Like he
got that dog.
Epitomizes. Like he's just a menace on the mound.
I don't think that is like BS or whatever, and I think our friend Ian Kahn would fully back you on that. He does a lot of stuff based on feel. He basically has like his knucklehead index and stuff, and I guarantee Manoah. Well, I shouldn't guarantee, but I bet he rates low on the knucklehead index. I don't think he's a knucklehead, and I bet Ian likes him, and he likes that dog in him as well. But I think there is something that he's not scared at all, and he showed it day one. Where was his debut, Justin? Do you remember?
Yankees.
He walked into Yankee Stadium and shit on him, and like he's just been taking the league by storm since. So you're right, he already is an ace, but I just mean he'll get that strikeout rate up to ace level. I'm ready to pay. I'm in on the Manoah train.
I think he's just the kind of guy that if you're going to draft him as your ace, make sure your number 2 has really gaudy strikeouts. Like,
cover the Ks in case they don't come. Absolutely.
And if they do come, that's just added icing on the
cake. I aim to make him my number 2, to be honest.
Yes, I agree.
In a pitcher heavy build, maybe I go first round hitter, second round and third round pitchers with Woodruff and Manoah, or whomever, that's the kind of build that I'm thinking with Manoah.
I also like him in a, like, if I can get him in the third, like, right? Like, so we're talking about a 15-team league here, obviously, right?
Top 25 pick.
Hitter, Manoah, Robbie Ray, like.
Yeah.
Like, something like that makes me feel pretty good walking into the 5th, 6th round where I can start attacking closers or other hitters.
I agree. I like that a lot. So Manoah, we're in. Let's stay in the AL East and go to left side. Nestor Cortes. course, we got to talk about him. He's having a wonderful season. He's kind of like an AL Tony Gonsolin. And I'm just using that as a loose comp. There's no real reason to drive that comp home. And he doesn't even have a billion wins either. But he's 10-4, 267 ERA, 0.97 WHIP, with 146 strikeouts in 145 innings for Nestor Cortes. You know, if you didn't think last year could hold, you were proven pretty wrong, folks. I'm not saying you specifically. I'm just saying anybody that was skeptical, he came out and said, you know what, I can do it for even more innings, because he's basically emulating last year. He has improved both his ERA and WHIP from 290.108 to 267.97. Difficult to square up at all. 199 average. Got the strikeouts, doesn't walk guys, doesn't throw hard, but did add 1 mile an hour of velo this year, up to 91.8 from the left side, which is low, but you don't need velo to succeed. So I don't lose my mind over that. He's 28 years old next year. What do you make of Nestor Cortes now, coming off of, what is this, 238 innings of excellent work?
I don't know. I feel like there has to be regression, but I think he is as difficult to analyze as he is to square up against, because he's just one of those guys that defies logic in the numbers. It really is, because you look at him and you go, there's no way. And you look at the numbers and you go, the xERA is actually better than the ERA.
It's all there, yeah.
Everything underlying says he should be fine. You just worry that the lack of velocity,
it decreases the margin for error.
And
it's plain and simple. That is well proven, by the way. That's not speculation. Mm-hmm. Velo earns you margin for error. So if you're riding a 91.8 as a left-hander, you don't need as big of a velo from the left side, but 91.8 is still low.
And he's one of these guys that relies upon being having pinpoint command and control.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the type of guys, this is the Zach Plesac argument of a few years ago. These kind of guys have a much slimmer margin for error already. Now you're also talking about a guy who really likes to mess with timing. Doesn't just mess with the hitter's timing. That messes with his own timing. We look at a guy who's been notorious for this over the last decade, Johnny Cueto.
I was going to say, he got that Cueto in him.
Yeah, he does. He is Cueto had the dreads. Cortes has the mustache. But there is so much that could go wrong. That being said, I don't have this overwhelming feeling, in spite of him being such a popular player, being on the Yankees, having such a great year. I feel like he's going to be on everybody's fade list. And I wonder, is he going to be much cheaper than he should be? Because people are I don't want to hold the bag. If
that's a good point about Nestor Cortes. Let me ask you this: 295 last year, obviously going way up.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 150, 100? I
think it's got to be inside the top 100.
You'd think, right? But I don't know that it will be.
I don't either.
Again, Shane McClanahan went 92, and I obviously it's hard for me to divorce myself from what Shane McClanahan is right now, and I was also a fan of his, so I just see that as he panned out, he's great. But Nathan Eovaldi went 102 last year, so you're right. If he was coming off a great year, but with his track record, you could, and I feel like I'm one of the bigger Nate Eovaldi fans, in the universe, to be honest. I love that guy, but I couldn't pay that last year, knowing his track record of not stringing together 2 healthy seasons. Cortes doesn't have that sort of same concern. I'm not making a 1-to-1 comparison there. I'm saying a dodgier type profile that doesn't have a full-scale track record went that high. So you're right. I think Cortes will be in that range. Will you pay it?
I think under the right circumstances. I don't think he's going to fit every single one of my builds. I think
here's a name for you. Sorry to cut you off, but I think this will illuminate it a little bit. Chris Bassett went 112, and he was coming off. Actually, this is actually a better comp than I originally thought too, because he was coming off of a similar innings count of greatness, 220 innings if you added up Bassett's pandemic season plus the 2021. He was riding 220 innings of a 290 ERA and a 109 WHIP. So kind of similar to Cortes here, now riding the 238 innings of a 276 ERA and a 101 WHIP. And that put him 112, throw on a Yankee tax, bump it up to like 90, 95. So I think you're right on the ADP. And you said you'd pay it in some circumstances. What are those circumstances that you'd pay for Cortes?
So with Cortes, I feel like there is this, obvious outcome that he could fall apart like that. Like all of a sudden, the messing with hitters isn't really working the way it's worked in the past. People are sitting on, certain pitches and just rocketing. And like all of a sudden you went from, your top 100 pick needs to be dropped. So I think you want to weigh that kind of outcome and really pair him with, an ace who has no question marks. None of these first time aces or guys with injury, you can't pair him with a DeGrom. You can't pair him even with like a McClanahan, considering he's hit the IL twice here down the stretch, and still pitches for the Rays, who may try to protect their ace.
So you're trying to get as clean a profile as you can with Cortes. Obviously, you can never guarantee anything, but you're looking for like a Dylan Cease to go with him, or is that too new of an ace?
I think there are a lot of question marks about Dylan Cease too.
Okay, Kevin Gausman then.
I think Gausman,
Gausman or Zach Wheeler's health too. But so like a Kevin Gausman, Brandon Woodruff is what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think a Woodruff or a Gausman, I think, are perfect examples of guys who I'd be fine pairing with.
Yeah. The only question I have is if the Yankee tax will push Cortes higher than we're saying. And don't forget, a playoff tax could definitely do that too.
Absolutely.
If he studs out for them on a big LCS or World Series run, that's going to move the needle on Cortes too. Their playoff tax, you will see a couple guys. It's always just a handful, but they get that big playoff tax, and that can be tough, and that can take me out. If that happens to Cortes, I would probably venture away if he's more of like a 75, 80th type pick.
I will say though, and maybe this is anecdotal, but I feel like with the evolution of the amount of information we have, I think people are less apt to give huge playoff taxes nowadays.
That's good.
It still happens, absolutely, because we saw with Bellinger, right? Like people saw the Bellinger playoffs and went, "Oh, Bellinger's back, baby!"
He's ready to go.
But I think mostly the playoff tax is a confirmation bias on guys people already want to like.
That's a fair point. And I think you can make a case that the playoff tax wears on as we get deeper into draft season.
Yeah,
it's probably only something to focus on for the rest of calendar year drafts, meaning October through December.
Because we didn't see like a huge bump for Jorge Soler or even like Eddie Rosario, like from last year. Like we didn't see
I disagree with that, especially Eddie Rosario. Eddie Rosario 175. That wasn't he like 300s the year before? Maybe he wasn't. Maybe I don't have frame of reference.
Yeah, I don't think you have frame of reference there.
Where did Soler go? I'm pulling up Soler. Soler went. Well, I'm looking at the main too. Actually, let me say what I just said about the timing of it. Let's go to late in that year.
Well, I think they'll be bad examples probably because they didn't sign.
They also didn't have teams. Yeah. Yep. No. And everything with the lockout. Yeah. Soler was 200. No, I think you're right. Eddie Rosario was 169. And that's October through December.
Even like Kevin Gausman, he didn't well, I guess he didn't have like a long playoffs because the Giants weren't in for very long. I don't know.
No.
I said, this could be anecdotal. Like this could just be my bad memory too.
I hear you though. I understand, and I do think that the playoff tax will dwindle. So even if it does spike them up, it'll probably dwindle as the draft season goes on. But there are certainly circumstances where you'd be interested in Cortes, an interesting lefty to be sure. Another interesting lefty who, hey man, I wasn't praying for his downfall, but I was calling for it. I was consistent that Martín Pérez would fade, and that you would be best served to be very, very careful here. And I was dead wrong. He has 183 innings now of a 290, 125 ERA whip combo over 30 starts, 12 wins, 21% K rate, 8% walk rate, 0.5 home run rate. That is the key to this 1 jillion%. He sliced his home run to fly ball rate more than in half, from 16 to 7%. But it wasn't out of nowhere. That sinker was a much bigger deal than I gave it credit for, to be honest. I was like, oh, he's using a sinker more in his four-seamer less, but come on. That and a cutter cannot be sustaining this all year. Well, guess what? I was dead ass wrong. He spiked his he spiked his sinker usage from 25 to 37%. That's how you keep the ball down for Martín Pérez. The 31-year-old had a great season. What's funny is I was a big Martín Pérez stan in his prospect days in his early career. So it's like I did want this to succeed, but that doesn't mean I was not in on it at all. I am a little happy to be wrong here, but I was dead wrong. What do you make of Martín Pérez? And are you going to pay for this next year now? Because he's going to be a free agent. We don't know if the sinker and the home run suppression is going to hold. What's the scoop with Martín Pérez? I will say this, and I bet that's the first thing you're going to say is he's not going to be expensive. I don't think the market's going to overprice this. I really don't.
I think he's going to end up back in Texas.
Good. That would play for me.
I think I think they're going to give him the qualifying offer. I believe he can get it. And I think two, why would the Rangers not have traded him at the deadline if they didn't think they were bringing him back? And there were reports when they made this move, that they were, strongly considering bringing him back on a multi-year deal. I think that would be huge for him because part of what has helped him is pitching in that ballpark, which Texas has just, become this pitcher haven, and pitching in that division with really, really bad teams to go up against. In some really, really great parks to pitch in. Seattle's a great place to pitch. Oakland's the best place in the majors to pitch. All you got to do.
Anaheim was not scary for a lot of the summer when Trout wasn't even there. You really just had to get around Ohtani, and that's lefty for Perez. So that wasn't even the most difficult thing.
The difficult part about that park is for righties because it's right field that they lowered to give those guys a little bit of offensive boost. But here's the thing, I think it just depends on his price. I think this is a Tyler Anderson situation where because he's kind of a soft tosser, people are not going to.
I don't think it's gonna be expensive at all.
I don't think it's gonna be expensive at all. I think this is another version of the Cal Quantrill who we're going to talk about here at the kind of the end of the list. I think people are going to say, "Hey, that was fun, great job."
And on the back, do your thing.
Thank you for your service.
Was a 300 ADP coming off of that.
I know.
Blistering second half.
He was one of my most rostered guys in DCs, and for some reason I went away from him as we got into March, and I shouldn't have.
I think Perez will be upper 200s, but that's still cheap.
I'm fine. Cheap. I'm absolutely fine with that. I'm not projecting him to have a low 3s ERA either. I think he's probably a 3.75 guy.
That's what I'll project is something in the upper 3s with a decent to mediocre whip.
Yeah, he's one of these guys where you want to watch your team build with him, right? Because they're it's not a huge strikeout, kind of profile, but yeah, he's fine. He's fine middle of your rotation, especially in deeper formats. I think in 10s and 12s, he's the last pitcher you add to your bench. But in 15s, if he's my 6th pitcher, fine, whatever. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with that with regards to Martín Pérez. Again, fat L, but really, really happy that he had a nice season. It was great. This guy, wow, he came out and put up a season to be proud of. And I was surprised to see Jeffrey Springs come out like that and just put up such a prideful season with a 2.45 ERA, 109 whip in 121 in the third with a 26% K rate, 6% walk rate. The craziest part is just that he came out of the bullpen to do this. Who the hell was Jeffrey Springs? I'd heard of the name before, but I couldn't give a second thought about him as some just journeyman middle reliever. And now here he is. The Rays have done it again and just found a damn gem. 22 starts on the season, 8 relief appearances. He's been wonderful. Most impressive was how they kind of turned him loose pretty quickly. His 4th start, he went 6 innings. I think it took Drew Rasmussen 112 career starts to go 6 innings. I'm just kidding. Obviously, he doesn't even have 112 career starts. But it was weird because it seemed like Springs got got the reins off of him sooner than somebody like Rasmussen, who'd been doing more, been pitching a lot more as a starter. This has been a pretty unimpeachable run for Springs. Like I said, it's something to really be proud of for him, and I'm glad he came out and did it. But What do you make of it for next year? Can you really buy into this? Do we even know if they're going to start him next year? I would think that they will, but you never freaking know with the Rays. So let's just assume they do start him. Are you going to pay for this? And where do you think the price is going to be on a Jeffrey Springs?
Yeah, I have no problem paying for it as long as it's cheap. Like I feel like he's one of these guys where the market is probably not going to buy back in at the level he probably should. If he's outside top 200, I think he's a fine gamble to take. There is a lot of question marks. You said it, right? What is Tampa going to do?
Mm-hmm.
They've got all these really, really good arms, and there's not going to be room for all these guys. But to like answer the question about like why was he given the opportunity when like guys like Rasmussen were kind of put the reins on, is because they don't give a shit about his arm. Like he's not part of the long-term plans. They're like, and we need guys to cover for the guys we're protecting. Like, you know, and I think they're all like, hey, we're gonna give you a chance to go out there and pitch. Just go pitch. Like,
just do your thing. We need you.
It's the same reason why they brought in Corey Kluber. Like,
yep.
We don't give a shit if your arm falls off. Like, it, you know, it just we care if McClanahan's arm fall off or Patino's arm
or Patino or Rasmussen.
Yeah, like, but we don't care about you. Just go out there and pitch.
By the way, I probably should have put Ras on this list, but we'll talk about him another time. We'll get plenty of offseason burn on him, but because he only has a 22% K rate. But Springs, man, 26% Ks, like it all checks out. It's a 3.32 SIERA, which is a far split from a 2.45 ERA. But I never expect anybody to have, when they have a sub-3 ERA, the expectation is not that your SIERA will match. But if you put up a representative, strong SIERA, which is an ERA indicator, FIP, if you prefer, whatever. But all those look pretty good for Springs. 85% left on base rate is huge. That will certainly regress. But even if that regresses, that gets him back to like what, mid threes? Is he a legit mid threes guy? Here's a question. If you regress him, he kind of looks like Nestor Cortes, like what we were saying about Nestor Cortes. In fact, they throw the same velo from the left side. Should you not just pass on Nestor and take Springs as a bargain basement Nestor? Assuming he's starting and everything too. If that changes, we will pivot. But right now we're assuming he's starting next year.
I mean, I think that there's a very good argument for that. Like,
because he'll be cheaper, right? Like we're saying top 100 cheaper, for Nestor.
But I also think that the path to playing time in Tampa is probably much more filled with landmines for Springs than
it always is with the Rays, right?
But if we're talking about like 100 pick difference or maybe even 150 pick difference, then obviously you should probably, because you don't want to pair these guys together. It's for me it's a matter of, hey, I missed out on Cortes. Well, yeah, you know what? Fine. I'll grab Springs later, and maybe that's the guy, because he'll be a lot easier to drop if things do go wrong. If things go wrong for Cortes, the problem is people are going to be like, I'm just going to hold on through it. And they will go over those landmines left and right. And I know this because I made these mistakes this year with a number of other pitchers, and so I almost like drafting. I bet you I will have more Springs than I do Cortes, because I would rather have the guy that has the big potential landmines be someone I have no problem dropping after 3 starts than the guy who the Trevor Rogers who I'm just going to hold on to because he's Trevor Rogers
through. This is my 6th round pick.
Yeah, I spent a 4th or 5th round pick on the dude, or the Lucas Giolito who is actively just destroyed me all year long. So
he's been so tough. How much would I have to pay you to make a team where you have Cortes, Perez, and Springs? Just get all 3 lefties.
That would be funny.
Your strikeouts would be in a little bit of trouble. It
definitely won't be in the main, but like I could see no, I can't see it.
I could see a DC. The only thing I could see is a DC where I'm just stocking arms, and those are the ones that are available to me.
Yeah, I guess. I think.
I wouldn't want to do it. I'm just saying that's the only way I could venture in.
It won't happen with Cortes, but like, could you see me do a Springs, a Perez, and a Cal Quantrill? Or like I keep referencing.
Yes, because you're definitely drafting Cal Quantrill.
Yeah, everybody's gonna fade him again, and I'm still gonna.
No, absolutely. Like his price will rise from the 300, but it's not going to rise in concert with what he's done again. And we'll get to him last. We got 2 more guys here. Let's talk Dean Kremer. And I could have put any number of Baltimore pitchers because they've all had some interest this year, but he's the only one that actually still has a good bottom line ERA. Like Bradish obviously had the gem yesterday at Houston. He's shown some things since coming off the IL. Tyler Wells has a 4.25 ERA. He's shown some things as well, but Kremer has a 3.33 ERA. So he has kept the ERA good all year. Homie loves the new wall out there in Baltimore. In fact, he loves it so much that I'm not sure I can be convinced that he didn't come up with the plan himself. He has a 3.17 home ERA. Now it's only 3.47 on the road, so that did kind of suggest that he was a complete product of the home park. So I'm sorry about that, Dean Kremer. But he does like pitching at home. 120 WHIP, where it jumps up to 133 on the road. The tough part here is the strikeout rate. It is bad, and again, it goes back to like a Tyler Anderson type rate. I mentioned Tyler Anderson was 6.7 K9, which is 6.4. It's 6.4 for Kremer. Since we're back on Fangraphs, I'll give you the rate. That's a 17% rate. That's bad, Justin. It's bad. It's too much contact. So he was able to survive a 9.1 hits per nine. Dean Kremer was. Can he do it again? Because I look at the 3.33 ERA and a 1.27 WHIP, and it tells me that WHIP tells me he needs to be higher in the ERA, and I worry a bit about it. Do you believe in Dean Kremer at all?
His xERA is 4.45.
Pretty much all you need to know. That's where his Sierra is too. So both metrics.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I would say though, 10% swinging strike rate suggests that he can add more Ks. What about the development piece? Is there anything there that you think Dean Kremer could develop? And thus, because he's probably going to be cheap, he was undrafted this year. His price is not going to be particularly expensive. He should be in the 200s easily. Does that encourage you at all? Like, hey, Baltimore's doing something. They had several guys go well. Would you rather draft him, Kremer, Bradish, Voth, or Wells? Since they're all four pretty dang similar.
I think I would rather draft the guy with the best strikeout upside, which is Bradish. So I think that's who I mean,
he's my number one too.
Yeah, you and I talked about it prior. Like the start last night was pretty impressive, especially you look at like what he did from a pitch mix and sequencing perspective.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. It was very, very impressive. He's been a 50% fastball guy all year. Bradish has. He threw 18 out of 100 pitches were fastballs and just carved up Houston. I mean, just like
two shutout, 8 2/3 shutout innings, 2 hits, 10 Ks, no walks. Yeah. Insane outing. Insane. All right.
And not only was it insane, wasn't it in? No, it was in Baltimore.
I thought it was in Houston too. Yeah, no. That's right. It was in Baltimore. It was great though. But anyway, with Dean Kremer, you're unlikely to buy even at like a 250 type ADP.
I think so. Yeah, there's too many landmines plus the lack of Ks. Like if he develops great, I think he's one of those guys you take a look at the early season schedule for the Orioles next year and you go, hey, if this is a really nice early season schedule, maybe I throw a dart on him late. But I'd rather pick him up off the waiver wire after he's disappointed people.
I'm not fully out here. I need more research on Bradish, Kremer, Wells, and Voth, but I'm intrigued by this Baltimore 4 here. Obviously, Grayson Rodriguez is going to be coming up. DL Hall.
They could bring in a pitcher.
I think they should sign Carlos Rodon. I think they should just follow the Mariners' path to a T and sign an ace in the offseason the way they signed Robbie Ray and just keep their Mariners track followed and add Rodon. So that would create some havoc too. So I'm gonna take a little bit of a fence sit on Kremer. I would be interested in the mid 200s price. If he is more expensive than that, I'll probably pass. But I think there could be some development here. But we got to move on because you have a hard out, and I got to give you time to talk about Cal Quantrill. So Michael Wacha gets skipped. Sorry, we got to talk Cal Quantrill. Like we've said, we've alluded to him a few times already. He's doing it again. He put up a 2.89 ERA last year with a 1.18 WHIP. Brilliant second half. But he had a 20% K rate, 8% walk rate. So he went pick 300. Same sort of shit. Now, it's not a sub-3 ERA again, but it's a 3.56, 1.24. But even that is too low for what his skills suggest. 17% K rate. He did cut the walk rate down to 6%. How's your boy doing it again? And are you going to rebuy yet again? Because he's probably only going to move up to like early 200s as opposed to low 300s.
He throws his four-seamer 4% of the time. He keeps guys off balance and guessing. He's really good at pitch sequencing.
And he has a deep arsenal. Cal Quantrill does.
Yeah, he's got a super deep arsenal. There is all sorts of ways this can go wrong. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like it.
At
Like
least that is baked into the price, though. Like, because legitimately, he's going to be like a 225 ADP. There, people aren't going to pay again for Quantrill, except for you. But you're not going to have to pay a lot either. So it's not like you're going to overdraft him, I don't think.
No, I mean, I don't think he's like, I still think he's probably outside the top 200 picks. Like, I just don't think that people are going to give him any credence. He does a really good job of not giving up free bases. He gets, he's got a decent strike or a decent, not a decent ground ball rate. So like, he's not letting people put it in the air against him a ton. Like, he does a lot of what he needs to do to limit damage. There is no upside though. Like, there is like, this is like the, I mean, and this has been great. Like a 356 ERA, like is great, but like, he's not going to like become this huge strikeout guy. Like, he's not going to win you your leagues. He's best suited for DCs, deeper format leagues, as a back end of a rotation stabilizing force. If he is going inside like the top 150 pick,
it won't happen.
175,
it won't happen.
I won't be interested. But I said, I don't think it will either.
No, I promise. I feel like I can promise it won't happen. Just quickly, because again, I know you got to go. But John Means was 208 last year, coming off a good season. Bailey Ober had a lot of hype. He was picked 209. They were right back to back. If that's where those guys were going, Jesus Luzardo 210, people buying back in on his hype. He's nowhere near that. He might go 300 again, Cal Quantrill. He really might. I said he won't, but he damn near might, man.
I think the really, really good comp here is Marco Gonzalez. Like,
yes.
Marco Gonzalez outpitched his peripherals every year until like this year, but like, you also see like, here's the downside, like, right? Like, this is a guy who's super, super cheap. That should be fine. Like, right. He's not going to win your league or anything, but he's going to be fine.
But there is an implosion chance.
There is an absolute, like, this guy is straight garbage. I think he'll know pretty early though. Like,
true.
So like, I think he's one of those guys like, hey, if he's bad, you just drop him and move on to the next guy, because he hasn't, you didn't put much into that stock.
Yeah, there are reasons to be concerned about Quantrill. It is all covered in the price though. So if you like him, you can draft him. Any guy you get with a pick that starts with a 3, could be off your roster in week 2. So just keep that in mind. So there's some of the suspicious breakouts. We don't have suspicion about some of them. A few others we're a little bit more cautious on, but a very interesting group. I really can't wait to see where drafts are going to start slotting these different guys. I already know that even though the season hasn't even wound down yet, I'm already jonesing for some October drafts, and I know they'll be coming up soon. So Justin, you got to get going. It was great talking with you. And what do you guys got planned for the weekend? You and Jason gonna be able to link up?
I gotta talk to Jason. He turned 50. He's a man now.
By the way, today's the anniversary of I'm a Man, I'm 40.
Oh, is it?
It's amazing that you brought that up incidentally, because it's the anniversary.
Oh, that's great. But yeah.
Yesterday was. I'm sorry. Anyway, close enough.
So hopefully we will get together on Sunday. I'll send him a text here today and confirm that. But other than that, man, it's end of the season, starting to wrap things up. I'm going to spend a lot of the weekend cleaning out my garage and getting to all those spring cleaning things that I didn't get to because it's too busy of a season for me. So
fall cleaning works though too. It's nice to reset. In fact, I'm doing all my stuff. I bought some new drawers I'm going to put together this weekend. So
we're starting to set up for Halloween. Like it's that time of year.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I hope you have a great weekend. You and I will definitely be back on Tuesday if you and Jason don't get together on Sunday. Take care.
Take it easy.